I never thought the woman I loved more than life itself would look me in the eye and call me a monkey in front of 300 of the city's most powerful people. The champagne was still dripping from my jacket when my white CEO wife screamed those three words that shattered everything. Disappear, monkey! You're dead to me. So I did exactly what she asked. I vanished into the night without a trace, leaving behind our $1 million townhouse, our perfect marriage, and the life I thought we'd built together. But what Ava didn't know was that her moment of racist rage had just unleashed something she never saw coming. 3 months later, I returned, not as the broken man who'd walked out of that ballroom, but as someone completely transformed, with money, power, and a plan that would turn her world upside down. She wanted me gone, but now I was back to reclaim everything she thought she'd destroyed. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from, because this story of betrayal and redemption is just getting started. The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand as I watched Ava work the room. She moved like she owned the place, which, in a way, she did. The Whitfield Foundation Gala was her mother's annual showcase, and Ava played the perfect daughter. Designer dress, practice smile, handshakes that lasted exactly the right amount of time. I adjusted my tie and tried to blend in. 3 years of marriage, and I still felt like an outsider at these events. The tuxedo fit well enough, but I could feel the stares, the looks that asked what a guy like me was doing here. Malik, darling. Eleanor Whitfield appeared beside me, her smile sharp as glass. How nice to see you supporting our cause. Of course, Mrs. Whitfield. Ava works hard on this. Yes, she does. Eleanor's eyes swept over me. Though I do hope you're not finding it all too overwhelming. Before I could answer, she glided away to greet a city councilman. I took a long sip of champagne and reminded myself why I was here. For Ava. Always for Ava. The ballroom sparkled with crystal and gold. String music floated over conversations about stock portfolios and yacht clubs. I recognized some faces from magazine covers and news reports. Old money mixed with new money, all of it more money than I'd ever seen in my life. My phone buzzed. A text from Luis at the shop. How's the fancy party? Don't let them make you feel small, hermano. I smiled and typed back. All good. Thanks for covering tonight. Malik, a warm voice called out. I turned to see Dr. James Morrison, one of the few people at these events who actually seemed happy to see me. How's that Mustang restoration coming along? Almost done. The engine block was in worse shape than we thought, but we're getting there. Excellent. You know, I was telling my brother-in-law about your work. He's got a '67 Camaro that needs some love. We talked cars for a few minutes. It felt good to discuss something I actually knew about, something that mattered to me. When Dr. Morrison excused himself, I felt lighter. Maybe these events weren't so bad after all. I looked around for Ava and spotted her near the silent auction tables. She was laughing at something a tall man in an expensive suit was saying, Grant something or other. I'd met him once before. Smooth talker, perfect teeth, the kind of guy who called everyone champ or buddy. As I walked toward them, a waiter hurried past me, his tray loaded with full champagne flutes. He was moving too fast, trying to keep up with the demand. I saw it coming before it happened. His foot caught on the edge of a table leg, and he stumbled. Time slowed down. The tray tilted. Champagne splashed across my jacket and shirt, cold and sticky. The waiter's face went white. Oh God, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. It's okay, I said, grabbing some napkins from a nearby table. Accidents happen. But the damage was done. The champagne had soaked through my shirt, and I could smell the sweet alcohol on my skin. Around me, conversations had stopped. People were staring. Well, well, a voice slurred behind me. Looks like someone had a little too much to drink. I turned to see board member Harrison, his cheeks flushed red from his own overindulgence. He swayed slightly as he grinned at me. "No, sir," I said calmly. "The waiter had an accident. I'm fine." "Sure you are," Harrison chuckled. "Probably not used to the good stuff, right? Maybe stick to beer next time, monkey boy." The word hit me like a slap. Monkey. The room went dead silent. I felt every eye in the place turn toward us. My hands clenched into fists, then slowly relaxed. I would not give them the satisfaction. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice steady. Harrison's grin widened. "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke." "Charles?" Eleanor Whitfield materialized beside us, her voice ice cold. "Perhaps you should get some air." But the damage was spreading. I could see phones coming out, cameras pointing in our direction. Social media would have this moment forever. The sophisticated gala crowd pretending they hadn't heard what they definitely heard. Ava appeared at my side, her face pale. "Malik, let's go clean you up." "No need," I said quietly. "I think I'll head home." "Don't be ridiculous," Eleanor snapped, but her voice carried across the room. "This is exactly the kind of disruption we don't need tonight." Ava's jaw tightened. I could see the pressure building in her face, the need to choose between defending me and keeping peace with her mother, between doing what was right and protecting her reputation. "Mother, please," Ava said, but her voice was weak. "Please what?" Eleanor's eyes were hard. "We have 300 donors here tonight, including the mayor. We cannot have this kind of circus." More phones were out now. The whispers were getting louder. I saw Grant moving closer, his face eager like he was watching a show. "Ava?" I said softly. "Let's just go." But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at her mother, at Grant, at the circle of faces watching us, the weight of their expectations, their judgment, their money. It was all pressing down on her. I... She started, then stopped. "Come on, Ava," Grant said with that perfect smile. "Don't let him ruin your night. He can take care of himself, right?" That's when something broke inside her. I could see it happen, the moment she chose their approval over my dignity. "You want to know what?" Ava's voice cut through the room like a knife. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with anger and champagne. "I am so tired of this. So tired of having to defend and explain and make excuses." "Ava," I said quietly, "don't." But she was beyond hearing me now. The pressure had been building for 3 years. Every sideways glance, every careful introduction, every time she had to prove I belonged in her world. "Disappear, monkey," she said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "You're dead to me." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt them settle into my chest, heavy and final. Around us, the room held its breath. Cameras clicked. Someone gasped. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved for 5 years, married for 3. The woman who'd once told me I was the only real thing in her artificial world. Now she stood there, breathing hard, her face twisted with embarrassment and rage. I set my champagne glass down on the nearest table. The crystal chimed softly against the white tablecloth. I didn't break eye contact with her until the very last second. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, the ballroom erupted in whispers. Phones buzzed with texts and posts. The story was already writing itself, spinning out into the world at light speed. I didn't run. I didn't slam any doors. I walked through that crowd with my head up and my shoulders straight, past the shocked faces and raised phones, past the security guards who stepped aside like they weren't sure what to do. The hotel lobby was marble and gold, all shine and empty beauty. The doorman held the door for me like nothing had happened. Maybe he hadn't heard. Maybe he was just being professional. "Good evening, sir. Can I call you a cab?" "No, thank you. I'll walk." The cold night air hit my face like a blessing. I pulled out my phone and turned off my location. Then I popped out the SIM card and dropped it in a trash can on the corner. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Everything inside me felt broken, but my hands were rock solid. I walked for 6 blocks before I found an alley behind a coffee shop, dark and quiet with just the hum of air conditioners and the distant sound of traffic. I leaned against a brick wall and let myself feel it. 3 words. 3 words that destroyed everything. I pulled up Luis's number on my phone and typed, "Need a couch." His response came back in 30 seconds. "Always, hermano. You know where the key is." Luis Moreno had been my foreman at the auto shop for 2 years, but he'd been my friend from day one. Solid, loyal, the kind of man who never asked questions when you needed help. I walked 12 more blocks to his apartment building. The key was under a fake rock by the back door, just like he'd said. His place was small and clean, with family photos on every surface and the smell of his wife's cooking still hanging in the air. She was visiting her sister in Phoenix for the month, which meant Luis was living on takeout and ESPN. Perfect timing. I found a note on the kitchen counter. Beer in fridge, blankets in the closet. Whatever happened, it's not the end of the world. L. I grabbed a beer and sat on his couch. The TV was turned to a sports channel, volume low, some late night baseball game from the West Coast. I watched without seeing, letting the familiar sounds wash over me. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. No calls, no texts, nothing from Ava. Part of me had expected her to follow me out of the ballroom, to chase after me and apologize, to explain that she hadn't meant it, that it was just the pressure and the champagne and her mother's expectations. But my phone stayed dark. I opened the beer and took a long drink. It tasted like nothing. Everything tasted like nothing now. On the coffee table, my phone's lock screen showed a photo of Ava and me from 6 months ago. We were at the beach, her arms around my neck, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember now. We looked happy. We looked like people who loved each other. I turned the phone face down. The baseball game played on. Someone hit a home run and the crowd cheered through the TV speakers. Normal people doing normal things, living normal lives where the person you loved didn't call you a monkey in front of 300 strangers. I finished the beer and lay back on the couch. Luis's ceiling had a water stain shaped like Texas. I stared at it until my eyes got heavy. Tomorrow would come, whether I was ready or not. But tonight, I just needed to disappear, just like she'd asked me to. The last thing I remembered before sleep took me was the sound of my phone buzzing once against the coffee table. A notification I didn't check. In my dreams, I was still standing in that ballroom, champagne dripping from my shirt, watching the woman I loved choose everyone else over me. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through Luis's windows, and I could smell coffee brewing in the kitchen. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then it all came rushing back. The coffee was strong and black, the way Luis always made it. I found him in the kitchen, already dressed for work in his coveralls. "Morning," he said without looking at me. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah, thanks for this. Don't mention it." He poured himself a mug and leaned against the counter. "You want to talk about it?" "Not yet." "Fair enough." He checked his watch. "Shop opens in an hour. You coming in?" I thought about it. The idea of normal work, of fixing things that could actually be fixed, sounded like exactly what I needed. "Yeah, I'll be there." Luis nodded and headed for the door. "Take your time. And Malik, whatever it is, we'll figure it out." After he left, I sat at his kitchen table and drank coffee in the quiet morning light. Outside, the city was waking up. People heading to work, living their lives, moving forward. I needed to move forward too. But first, I needed to figure out what that looked like. My phone was still face down on the coffee table, still silent. I left it there. The garage bay smelled like motor oil and possibility. I'd been working nights for 3 weeks straight, taking on side jobs that Luis slipped my way. Small stuff at first, oil changes, brake pads, tune-ups. But word traveled fast in certain circles, especially when you did good work and kept your mouth shut. My hands moved over the vintage carburetor like they had their own memory. Strip it down, clean each part, rebuild it better than before. There was something peaceful about it, something honest. Metal didn't lie to you or call you names at fancy parties. "You got another one," Luis called from his office. He walked over with a piece of paper in his hand. "Private client, cash job." I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at the note. An address in the hills, no name, just a phone number and 1967 Shelby Cobra. Complete restoration, discretion required. "Discretion?" I asked. Louis shrugged. "Rich folks like their privacy, especially when they're spending stupid money on old cars." The phone number had a local area code, but when I called, a woman with a crisp voice answered. "Mr. Carter, we understand you do exceptional work. We have a vehicle that requires special attention." "What kind of special?" "The kind where you don't ask questions and we pay very well. Are you interested?" I looked around Luis's shop. Good place, but small. Limited tools, limited space. This sounded like the kind of job that could change things. "I'm interested." "Excellent. We'll have the vehicle delivered tonight. Payment is half up front, half on completion. Timeline is flexible, but quality is not. Can you handle that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Perfect. Oh, and Mr. Carter, we heard about your recent difficulties. We want you to know that sort of thing doesn't matter to our clients. Good work speaks for itself." The line went dead before I could ask what she meant. That night, a covered trailer pulled up to the shop's side entrance. Two men in dark clothes unloaded a car that made my breath catch. The Cobra was a mess on the outside, rust, dents, primer patches. But underneath, I could see the bones of something beautiful. They left an envelope on the driver's seat. Inside was more cash than I'd made in the last 6 months, along with a note, "Make her sing again." I spent the next week just studying the car, taking photos, making notes, researching parts. The engine was seized, the interior was shot, and the body had more problems than a soap opera. But the frame was solid and the numbers matched. This was a real one, not some kit car, worth more than most people's houses when it was done right. I started slow, nights and weekends, working by myself after Luis closed the shop. I pulled the engine, stripped it down to the block, and found exactly what I'd expected: decades of neglect and amateur repairs. But I also found something else. This car had been loved once. I could tell by the careful modifications, the high-quality parts someone had installed long ago. Whoever owned this had known what they were doing. The work became a meditation: sand, clean, rebuild, repeat. Every part had to be perfect. Every surface had to shine. I lost myself in the rhythm of it, in the satisfaction of bringing something beautiful back to life. My phone sat in my locker most days, still silent. Ava hadn't called, hadn't texted, nothing. I told myself I was fine with that. But late at night, when the shop was quiet and I was alone with the Cobra, I'd find myself thinking about her, about us, about the life we'd built and how fast it had all come apart. 3 words. That's all it took. The money from the Cobra job was good, but it was the referral that followed that changed everything. Then, another one after that. High-end clients who valued quality and silence. Classic cars that needed resurrection, not just repair. I rented a small bay across town, month to month. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I bought better tools, professional equipment, started building a reputation in circles I'd never known existed. MC Restorations, I called it. Clean and simple, the work kept coming. A '63 Corvette split window, a Ferrari 250 that someone's grandfather had left in a barn for 30 years. Each job was bigger than the last, each client more connected than the previous one. I stopped reading the news, stopped checking social media. The world outside my shop felt loud and complicated and full of people who thought they knew my story. Inside my bay, with my hands on an engine, everything made sense. Luis helped when he could, but mostly I worked alone. Long hours, careful attention to detail, no shortcuts, no compromises. Every car that left my shop was perfect, or as close to perfect as human hands could make it. The money started adding up. Real money, the kind that meant options, freedom, the ability to choose. I bought better clothes, nothing flashy, just well made, a good watch that didn't look expensive but was. Started eating at places that didn't have paper napkins. Small changes, but they mattered. They reminded me who I was becoming. One afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. They're rewriting what happened, making you the bad guy. Thought you should know? N. Nora, Ava's assistant. I'd always liked her. She was real in a world full of fake smiles and careful words. I didn't reply to the text. Wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to know what they were saying, what story they were telling, but a bigger part of me didn't care anymore. Let them tell whatever story they needed to tell. I was writing my own now. The Cobra was nearly finished when I got the call about a Mercedes that needed work. Not restoration, just a detail and a small paint touch-up. Simple job, but the address made me pause. Ava's office building, downtown, 53rd floor. I almost said no, almost hung up and pretended the call never happened. But something stubborn inside me wouldn't let her win that way, wouldn't let her make me hide. I took the job. The Mercedes was in the building's parking garage, a silver S-Class with a small scrape on the rear bumper. Nothing major. Someone had probably clipped it backing out of a space. I worked methodically, the way I always did. Cleaned the car inside and out, polished every surface, touched up the paint until you couldn't tell there'd ever been damage. Professional, perfect. Exactly what they'd paid for. I was putting my tools away when I heard the elevator ding across the garage. Footsteps on concrete, heading toward the exit. Multiple sets. I didn't look up. Didn't need to. I knew that walk, the rhythm of those heels on hard surfaces. The footsteps stopped. Malik? Her voice was smaller than I remembered, uncertain in a way that Ava Whitfield never was. I finished packing my tool bag before I turned around, took my time, stayed calm. When I finally looked at her, I saw 3 months of changes in her face. Thinner, tired, like she wasn't sleeping well. She was with two security guards and a woman I didn't recognize. Business clothes, serious expressions, the kind of people who dealt with problems. Ava, I said. Nothing more. We looked at each other across the garage. 3 months ago, she'd told me to disappear. Now, here I was, exactly where she worked, exactly where she'd see me. But I wasn't the same man who'd walked out of that ballroom. I wore clean coveralls with my company logo. My tools were professional grade, organized, expensive. My hands were clean, my posture confident. I looked like what I was, a successful business owner doing a job, not the desperate, broken man she'd probably expected to see. I I didn't know you'd be working here, she said. Your building manager hired me, small paint job. I gestured to the Mercedes. All finished. I pulled an invoice from my clipboard and tucked it under the windshield wiper. Professional, clean, with my business name and contact information at the top. The security guards shifted uncomfortably. The woman with Ava checked her phone, probably wanting to move along. But Ava just stood there, staring at me like she was seeing a ghost. You look, she started, then stopped. Different? I asked. Good. You look good. I nodded once, picked up my tool bag, and walked toward my van. It was new, or new to me anyway. Clean, reliable, with magnetic signs on the sides that said MC Restorations, Classic Car Specialists. Malik, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. Could we could we talk sometime? Maybe get coffee? Now I did turn around, looked at her straight on, the way I should have done 3 months ago in that ballroom. I don't think so, Ava. Please. I know I don't deserve it, but you're right, I said quietly. You don't deserve it. I loaded my tools into the van and drove away without looking back. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing there in her perfect business suit, watching me leave. It should have felt like victory, should have felt like revenge. Instead, it just felt sad. But it also felt like something else, like the first step towards something new, something better, something that was entirely mine. That night, I worked late on a '71 Mustang Mach 1. The owner was a doctor who'd bought it as a teenager and stored it in his garage for 30 years. Now his son was getting married, and he wanted to surprise him with the restored car. Good story. The kind of work that meant something. My phone buzzed around 11, a text from the same unknown number. Can we meet? I have information you need to know. N. I thought about it for a long time. Nora had always been straight with me, even when it meant going against her boss. If she said I needed to know something, she was probably right. I typed back, Corner Diner on 5th Street, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Her response was immediate. Thank you. I went back to work on the Mustang, but my concentration was broken. Whatever Nora wanted to tell me, it was going to change things again. I was getting tired of things changing, but maybe that was the price of building a new life. Maybe change was all I had left. The Mustang's engine purred under my hands, smooth and strong. 30 years of waiting, and now it was ready to run again. Just like me. The corner diner on 5th Street hadn't changed in 20 years. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, coffee that could wake the dead. I got there early and took a booth in the back where I could see the door. Nora arrived exactly at 8, looking over her shoulder like she expected to be followed. She slid into the seat across from me, her hands shaking slightly as she set down her purse. You want coffee? I asked. Please, and thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would. The waitress brought 2 cups and filled them without being asked. Small town service, even in the middle of the city. When she was gone, Nora leaned forward and kept her voice low. There are things happening that you need to know about. I'm listening. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of screenshots, text messages, emails, financial records. It's Grant. He's been stealing from Ava, small amounts at first, then bigger ones, expense accounts, petty cash, even some charity donations. I studied the evidence. Grant's signature on receipts for meals he'd never eaten, trips he'd never taken, services that were never provided. The amounts were small individually, but they added up. How long has this been going on? At least 6 months, maybe longer. Nora swiped to another screen. But that's not the worst part. He's been feeding information to reporters about you, about what happened at the gala, making up stories. The next screenshots showed email chains between Grant and someone at a gossip website, messages about the violent mechanic husband and gold digger schemes, and insider sources confirm erratic behavior. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter much in gossip circles. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Nora looked down at her coffee cup. Because it's not right. What Ava said that night was terrible and I can't excuse it. But Grant's been manipulating the situation from the beginning. He wanted you gone so he could move in on her. And how's that working out for him? Better than it should be. Ava's been a mess since the gala. Guilty, confused, not thinking straight. Grant's been there playing the supportive friend, telling her that moving on is the best thing for everyone. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Are they together? Not yet, but he's working on it. She slid a folder across the table. These are copies of everything I could get. Financial records, emails, text messages. I thought you should have them. I opened the folder and flipped through the papers. Months of carefully documented theft and manipulation. Grant had been busy. What do you want me to do with this? I don't know, that's up to you. But I thought you deserved to know the truth. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us staring at the evidence spread across the table. Outside, the city hummed with late night energy. Inside the diner, it felt like we were in a bubble, separate from the rest of the world. Can I ask you something? Nora said. Sure. Are you doing okay? I mean, really okay? I thought about it. 3 months ago, I would have said no. 3 months ago, I was sleeping on Luis's couch with a broken heart and no plan for the future. Now, I had my own place, a growing business, money in the bank. I was building something real, something that belonged to me. Yeah, I said. I think I am. She smiled for the first time since she'd sat down. Good. You deserve better than what happened to you. We all deserve better than what happened. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was working on a 1965 Mustang convertible. The caller ID said Grant Huxley. I almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail and pretended he'd never called. But curiosity won out. MC Restorations. Malik, how are you, buddy? Grant's voice was as smooth as ever, like we were old friends catching up. I heard you're doing some interesting work these days. What do you want, Grant? Just thought we should talk. Man to man, you know. Clear the air a little. I put down my wrench and wiped my hands on a rag. I'm listening. How about we meet for drinks? I know a great rooftop place downtown. My treat. I don't drink with thieves. There was a pause. When Grant spoke again, his voice had lost some of its polish. I'm sorry? What did you say? You heard me, but sure, let's meet. I'll see you at the Skyline Bar at 7. I hung up before he could respond. The Skyline Bar was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive drinks, beautiful people, view of the whole city spread out below. Grant was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a martini and that perfect smile. Malik, glad you could make it. He stood up and offered his hand. I ignored it and sat down across from him. Straight to business then, Grant said, his smile flickering. I like that. So, I hear you're doing well for yourself. Classic car restoration, right? Interesting pivot. It's honest work. Of course it is, and I respect that, I really do. He took a sip of his martini. But I have to wonder if you're sustainable. Meaning? Well, your client base has to be pretty limited, right? I mean, how many people really need vintage Ferraris restored? It's a niche market. The waitress came by and I ordered a beer. Local brewery, nothing fancy. When she was gone, Grant leaned forward. The thing is, I might be able to help you expand. I know people with serious collections, museum quality stuff, the kind of work that could really set you up. In exchange for what? Nothing dramatic, just discretion about certain business matters that might come up. I looked at him across the table. Expensive suit, perfect hair, manicured nails, everything about him screamed money and privilege and the kind of confidence that came from never having to face real consequences. You mean keeping quiet about you stealing from Ava? His smile froze. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper, one of Nora's financial records showing Grant's signature on a receipt for a restaurant meal that cost more than most people made in a week. May 15th, dinner for 4 at Le Bernardin, charged to the Whitfield Foundation as a business expense. I slid the paper across the table, except Ava was in Los Angeles that day, and the restaurant confirmed that only one person ate that meal. Grant's face went pale. Where did you get this? Does it matter? He stared at the paper like it might catch fire. Look, that's just... There's an explanation for that. Sometimes the accounting gets mixed up. I'm sure there is. I finished my beer and stood up. Thanks for the drink offer, but I'll pass. On everything. Wait. Grant reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. You don't understand what you're dealing with here. These people, they have lawyers, connections. They can make your life very difficult if you cause problems. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then back up at his face. Let go of me. He did, but kept talking. I'm trying to help you here, Malik. Work with me, and everybody wins. Fight me, and, well, everybody knows what happened at that gala. Everybody knows you have a temper. Do they? Come on. You think people are going to believe you over me? I went to Harvard Business School. You fix cars. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. You know what the difference is between me and you, Grant. What? When I fix something, it stays fixed. I walked away from the table, leaving him sitting there with his martini and his expensive view and the growing realization that his perfect plan might not be so perfect after all. Outside, the city night was cool and clear. I walked the 10 blocks back to my apartment, thinking about everything that had happened. Grant's threats didn't scare me. Men like him were all bark and no bite when you stripped away their connections and their money. But Ava, that was more complicated. My phone rang as I was climbing the stairs to my building. Eleanor Whitfield's name appeared on the screen. This was going to be interesting. Mrs. Whitfield, Mr. Carter, I think it's time we had a conversation. About what? About what's best for everyone involved. My office, tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I'll think about it. I don't think you understand. This isn't a request. I stopped on the landing outside my door. Then, let me make something clear, Mrs. Whitfield. I don't work for you anymore. I don't owe you anything, and I don't take orders from you. If you want to talk, you can ask nicely. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, but also more respectful. Mr. Carter, I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tomorrow afternoon. Would 2 o'clock be convenient? I'll be there. The line went dead. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. The place was small but clean, furnished with things I'd bought myself. No designer furniture or family money, just honest work paying for an honest life. In the bedroom, I had a framed photo of the first car I'd ever restored completely on my own, a 1969 Camaro SS that belonged to an old man whose son had died in Vietnam. He'd kept the car in his garage for 30 years, waiting for his boy to come home and drive it. When he finally decided to let it go, he'd brought it to me in pieces. Make it beautiful again, he'd said. Make it run like my boy would have wanted. I'd spent 6 months on that car. Every bolt, every surface, every detail perfect. When it was done, the old man had cried. That's when I'd known this was more than just work. This was about bringing things back to life, about taking something broken and making it whole again. Maybe that's what I was doing for myself, too. My phone buzzed with a text message. Nora again. Grant's been asking questions about our conversation. Be careful. I typed back. Thanks for the warning. I can handle Grant. But even as I sent the message, I wondered if that was true. Grant had connections, money, influence. All I had was the truth and a growing reputation in a very specific business. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it wasn't. I went to bed that night thinking about tomorrow's meeting with Eleanor. Whatever she wanted, it wasn't going to be good for me. Women like Eleanor Whitfield didn't invite people to their offices to congratulate them on their success. But I'd faced worse things than her disapproval. I'd survived 3 words that were meant to destroy me. Whatever she had planned, I could handle it. I hoped. Eleanor Whitfield's office was everything I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, antique furniture, oil paintings worth more than most houses. She sat behind a desk the size of a small car, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a month. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Mrs. Whitfield. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Please, sit. Would you like coffee? I'm fine. I stayed standing. Something about the room made me want to keep my options open. Very well. She opened a folder on her desk and pulled out several sheets of paper. I wanted to discuss your recent activities. My work, you mean? Yes, your work. She slid one of the papers across the desk. It was a printout of my business license application. MC Restorations. Quite ambitious. It's honest work. Oh, I don't doubt that. You've always been hardworking. That was never the issue. I picked up the paper and looked at it. Everything was in order. Everything legal. What is the issue then? Eleanor leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a problem she needed to solve. The issue, Mr. Carter, is that you're operating in circles that intersect with our family's interests. Wealthy collectors, museum boards, charity auction committees, people who know us. So? So it creates complications, awkward situations. People ask questions about why my daughter's former husband is suddenly moving in these circles. I'm good at what I do. I'm sure you are, which is why I wanted to offer you a solution that benefits everyone. She pulled out another folder, this one thicker. We're prepared to offer you a very generous settlement, enough to relocate your business to another city perhaps, start fresh somewhere new. I looked at the folder but didn't touch it. How generous? Very. 6 figures. Cash. No strings attached except that you take your business somewhere that doesn't intersect with our social circles. You want to pay me to disappear. I want to pay you to succeed somewhere else. Words hung in the air between us. Outside the windows, the city spread out below us. My city, the place I'd grown up, where I'd learned my trade, where I was building something real. What if I say no? Eleanor's smile was sharp as a blade. Then I'd hate for your new clients to start hearing stories about your temperament, about what really happened that night at the gala, about how you've been harassing my daughter and her friends. None of that's true. Truth is subjective, Mr. Carter, especially when it comes to wealthy people protecting their investments. I stood there for a long moment, looking at her. This woman who'd raised the daughter I'd loved, who'd taught her that people like me were disposable, who was now sitting in her ivory tower trying to buy me off like a problem that could be solved with money. I'll think about it, I said finally. Don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't stay open forever. I walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. Mrs. Whitfield? Yes? Your daughter called me a monkey in front of 300 people. Now you're trying to pay me to disappear. You want to know what the real problem is? She waited. It's not my temperament, it's yours. I left her sitting there with her folder full of money and her threats and her perfect view of a city she thought she owned. The elevator ride down felt like the longest 60 seconds of my life. That evening, I was working late on a 1973 Porsche 911 when my phone rang. Ava's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer, almost let it ring through to voicemail like I had with every other call from her over the past month, but something made me pick up. Hello, Ava. Malik. Her voice was soft, tired. Could we meet somewhere? Just to talk? I looked around my shop. Clean, organized, mine. A place where I had control, where I made the rules. Where? That diner where we used to go after movies. If you're willing. The Silver Moon Diner. We'd spent dozens of late nights there in the early days, talking until sunrise over coffee and pie. Before her world and mine had gotten so complicated, when we were just two people who'd found something real in each other. When? Now? I know it's late, but I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Silver Moon looked exactly the same. Red booths, chrome fixtures, pie case by the register. Ava was already there when I arrived, sitting in our old booth in the corner. She looked smaller somehow, like the past few months had worn her down. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "What do you want, Ava?" She flinched at the directness of it, but I was done pretending, done being polite. "I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just. I want you to know that what I said that night, it wasn't who I am. It wasn't who I want to be. But it was who you were that night." "Yes?" She looked down at her hands, folded on the table. "I was angry and embarrassed, and I felt trapped between you and my mother and all those people watching. I said the worst thing I could think of to make you go away. Mission accomplished. I didn't mean it, Malik. You have to know that." I studied her face. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd loved. She looked sincere, broken, genuinely sorry, but sorry didn't undo what had been done. "What do you want from me, Ava? Forgiveness? Understanding? Because I'm not sure I have either of those to give you." "I want." She stopped, wiped her eyes with a napkin. "I want to explain why I did it. Not to excuse it, but to help you understand." "I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. "Growing up with my mother, everything was about appearances, about what people thought, what they said at dinner parties, what they wrote in society columns. I learned to be whatever people needed me to be, to keep the peace. So you decided I was the problem." "I decided I was tired of defending our marriage to people who would never accept it. I was tired of the looks, the comments, the constant judgment. And that night, when that man said what he said and everyone was staring, I just broke." The waitress came by and refilled our coffee cups. We sat in silence until she was gone. "I chose the easy path," Ava continued. "I chose them over you. I chose their approval over doing what was right. And I've regretted it every day since. Regret doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "But maybe this will." I opened it and found a check, made out to me, for an amount that made my eyes widen. "What's this?" "Half of everything. The house, the accounts, the investments. What you should have gotten if we'd done this right." I stared at the check. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. Enough to expand my business, buy better equipment, maybe even open a second location. "I can't take this." "Why not? It's yours. It was always yours." "Because it's guilt money, and I don't want your guilt." I slid the check back across the table. Her face crumpled. "Then what do you want from me?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Revenge? Her suffering? Her mother's empire to crumble? "I want you to own it," I said finally. Publicly, completely. No spin, no excuses, no blaming the champagne or the pressure. What you said was racist and cruel, and you need to say so. "Malik." "That's my price, Ava. You want forgiveness? You want to make this right? Then stand up and tell the truth about what you did." She sat there for a long time, staring at her coffee cup. I could see her weighing the cost, her reputation, her career, her mother's approval. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, what?" "I'll do it. I'll make a statement. A real one." I nodded and stood up. "Then we might have something to talk about." "Where are you going?" "Home. I've got work to do in the morning." "Malik, wait." She reached across the table and caught my hand. "Are we... Is there any chance we could try again? After everything?" I looked down at her hand on mine, soft, manicured, unmarked by real work. Once upon a time, that touch had meant everything to me. "No," I said gently. "We're done, Ava. We were done the moment you said those words. But if I make the statement, if I fix this, you're not fixing this for us. You're fixing it because it's right." I pulled my hand free and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard her start to cry. It should have felt like victory. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt like the end of something that had been over for a long time. 3 days later, Ava held a press conference. No prepared remarks, no spin doctors, no careful language. She stood at a podium in front of cameras and reporters and told the truth. She talked about the gala, about the pressure, about the ugly words she'd said. She called them what they were: racist, inexcusable, wrong. She apologized to me by name, to the people who'd heard it, to anyone who'd been hurt by her actions. She stepped down from her position at the company. Temporarily, she said, until she could do the work to become the person she should have been all along. It was everything I'd asked for, and more. The story ran on every news channel, every website, every social media platform. The woman who'd been born into privilege admitting she'd used the worst kind of language against the man she'd married. Some people praised her honesty, others called it too little, too late. Everyone had an opinion. I didn't watch any of it. Instead, I worked. I finished the Porsche and started on a 1967 Mustang Fastback. I hired an assistant, a young kid named Marcus who had good hands and a willingness to learn. I moved to a bigger shop with better equipment. The work kept coming. Word of mouth in collector circles was better than any advertising. People with beautiful, broken cars who trusted me to bring them back to life. Luis stopped by one afternoon while I was adjusting the carburetor on a 65 Corvette. "Saw the news?" he said. "Yeah. How you feeling about it?" I straightened up and wiped my hands on a rag. "Honestly, I'm not sure." "She did what you asked her to do." "Yeah, she did. But, but it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't take back what she said or fix what it broke." Luis nodded. "Some things can't be fixed, hermano. Only replaced." He was right. Some damage went too deep for repair. Some breaks were permanent. But that was okay. I was building something new now, something that belonged entirely to me. A month later, I was test driving the finished Corvette when I saw her. Ava, walking out of a coffee shop I'd never seen her at before. Not her usual place, somewhere normal people went. She looked different. Simpler clothes, less makeup, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked real, in a way I'd forgotten she could be. Our eyes met through the windshield. She smiled, a small, sad smile that said everything and nothing. I nodded once and drove on. That night, I sat on the fire escape outside my apartment, looking out at the city lights. My city, the place I'd chosen to stay, to build, to make my mark. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you, A." I looked at it for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were over, some chapters were closed, but the book wasn't finished yet, not even close. In the distance, a car engine revved, someone taking their baby out for a late night drive. The sound made me smile. That's what I did now. I brought dead things back to life. I took what was broken and made it run again. Not everything could be saved, but some things could be made better than they'd ever been before. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. I went inside, set my alarm for 6 a.m., and got ready for another day of honest work, another day of building something that would last, another day of being exactly who I'd chosen to become. The past was done, the future was waiting, and I was ready for both.